Hey everyone, this is Todd. I just wanted to jump in right before we begin the final episode of Beneath the Planet of the Apes to give a little bit of update on where we're going next. You'll hear us speak in this that we're going to do our best to not take a long break, and that remains true. However, as was said over and over, I had to have shoulder reconstructive surgery, and that kind of slowed down production a bit. We are going to ramp up production real quick and do a bunch of back-to-back recording sessions so we build up our bank. What this all means to you is that instead of being a seamless right from beneath into escape, we may take about a week or two in there. So don't be surprised if you see that take a little bit, but we will be back in a couple of weeks. I can't give you an exact date, but our intention is to be here very quickly. So enjoy this episode of Beneath the Planet of the Apes as we wrap it up and know that we're about to go into Escape, which I am thrilled because I've said 1,000 times. It's one of my absolute favorite entries in the franchise. I hope everyone's doing well, and we'll be back to talk to you soon about Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
On today's Minute of the Apes,
Go Team Apes!
I don't know what we're doing now.
They greenlit the sequel without a story in mind. They just wanted to equal an unexpected gold mine. He said, oh no, as Heston said, I got to go. These are just some of the facts you ought to know as we go. Beneath the Minute of the Apes. Beneath the Minute of the Apes. Beneath the Minute of the Apes.
The only good human is a dead human.
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes, the daily podcast where we break down every minute of the Planet of the Apes movies, 1 minute at a time. I'm Todd. That was Richard and Sean doing their Wonder Twin powers. And here we are in minute 95.
We were like in a weird fist bump, not really like Go Team Venture kind of thing. We were doing apes. And it was kind of awkward.
We have to work on it.
I didn't want to say anything, but it was
sad.
kind of interesting.
Go Team things that don't fit together when you put your hands together.
What are you doing over there? Oh, Richard's making not so nice hand gestures that I don't know what to do with them.
But when you go to like shake somebody's hand and they want to fist bump, and when you go to fist bump and somebody wants to shake your hand,
but that also
when you want to high five and they're trying to shake your hand, I mean, this happens to me like every freaking day.
In Thor Ragnarok, they do that. There's a scene where Bruce Banner and Thor are looking at each other and they see the devil's anus and they know they're going to get out of here this way. And Thor goes to give a fist bump, and Bruce Banner goes to give a high five, and he just wraps his hand around it.
They call that a turkey butt. That's what kids call that. Because having a teenage kid, if you fist in that, it's a turkey butt.
Yeah.
Well, then I would do that intentionally all the time now because that's hilarious.
But who gets to be the turkey and who's the butt?
So I coach CrossFit, and I'm like, all right, everybody. At the end of class, I'm like, everybody come together. Let's talk about the workout. You know what? Hey, high fives. I will tell them literally what I'm about to do because if I don't, they're like, we're going to fist bump, handshake, partial hug.
So I read something the other day about it was this African-American guy saying the widest things you can do in the world are to not know what you're trying so hard to figure it out, or, and I swear to God, the day before with my daughter and one of her best friends, I had been like, high five, come on, and they didn't do it right. And I said, come on, give it to me real. And the guy said, when a white guy says, come on, really high five me and does it again, I was like, well, shit. I was the worst offender in the whole world. So
I have to do that now.
Don't really high five. Just take the bad high five.
Okay.
I do. I tell people like, let's high five. We're going to high five.
And then do you look at the elbow to make sure you hit it right?
You know, we're at minute 95, and when we're talking about high fives and what you do with things like that, we know that
the movie's over.
We're done. So, Sean, how does minute 95 begin and end?
We start minute 95 with Jane Franciscus's credit, which is easy to say, and as Brent, and ends with and Charlton Heston as Taylor.
So I'm going to say it right now, we're not going to play this minute because it's silent.
It's
so
complete silent.
Here's what you need to know. It starts with credits. It ends with credits. We're done. Let's talk about Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
But it's just
I've got
just
our count
the
for
actors
us.
credits. Go ahead.
As a minute 95.
Oh, yeah, yes.
As a minute 95, everybody dead.
So there was a moment. Now, keep in mind that Sean only watches these movies a minute at a time because he's never watched the classics, but Todd and I had. So at the end of Planet of the Apes, Sean said, hey, you know, we did the count for the first movie. It wasn't quite as big as I thought it was going to get. Should I do it for the second movie?
Continue it with this?
For Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And I just remember going to Todd and pulling him aside and just snickering, knowing how this movie is going to. Yes, Sean, you should continue that count because you know what? Everybody dies. But we can't tell Sean that. But that was in my head like, this is going to be crazy. His count's going to go through the freaking roof.
So a friend of mine who I do another podcast with was listening to it and said, does Sean kind of realize where things are going to that point? And I thought, no. And you know what? I've loved that. I've loved that you don't know what these films are.
I would have expected the ending to be everybody there dies, not the entire world
But
dies.
he knows there are 5 more movies, or three more movies. Sorry, 3 more movies. Like he knows that it doesn't end.
That was one of my notes I did have for the last minute of how are there 3 more movies after
It
this?
literally ended.
Yeah.
Everybody died.
Voiceover says everybody gone.
It's an interesting choice to kill off everybody, and we kind of already went into that the last time. Is what do you do when the world says, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, I don't want to be involved in this anymore, yet I feel betrothed into this man who took a chance and created this franchise with me, who then is fired by his daddy and is pissed off and says, I want to kill everybody in there, and they both get together and they commit mass genocide. So how do you deal with that? We get the death of everyone. Then we end a film with credits that is only the list of the actors, white text on black cards.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's filing out at that point, and I kind of threw this out the last time. That's even more morose. That there is nothing. There's not even a sorrowful dee da 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 dee. Nothing that says we're sad. Instead, it's quiet. I mean, it's absolute silence.
Heston got the "and" credit.
Yeah, Heston got a lot of things. It's just, I struggled as I watched this to think of any other film that has killed every major character. Okay, Schindler's List. The mass genocide of an entire group of people through World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Still shows the hope.
The survivors at the end.
That has the absolute beautiful idea that they can take, here's one man's difference, and then to dissolve from the fictional to the real life, and then they walk around his grave and put the stones on his grave, which is a sign of acknowledgement through the Jewish population. They have that. That's hope. This has zero hope.
I will say this. So I went back and kind of did a little research trying to figure out what movie killed the leads.
Okay.
At the end of
Bonnie
the film.
and Clyde.
At the end of the film.
Yes.
All right. So this is 1971, right?
Mm-hmm.
I found a lot more modern films than did classic films.
Okay.
But we look at classic films. We're looking at Bonnie and Clyde.
Yep.
Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
True.
They were all movies that were framed where you knew the characters were going to die. You knew that these characters had no hope at the end.
Already.
Right now, the more modern films, Titanic, Philadelphia, Thelma and Louise, Alien 3, Gladiator, to a certain level, Matrix, are all modern films in which the characters die, but they die with a sense of optimism of what's going forward.
That's exactly it. When you said Alien 3 and Thelma and Louise, I thought, okay, Alien 3 has that, and that's David Fincher before David Fincher became David Fincher. But it's still that almost angelic shot if she falls back in a very Christ-like pose.
Right. And the alien jumps out and she keeps it from getting away. Yeah.
Gladiator, he goes to Valhalla, whatever heaven is at that moment. Like he goes to join his people.
And then Thelma and Louise is the two women understanding that we had each other, and they go across, and it's even though we die together. They had more than they began with.
And Titanic is the death of a lead character, but there's still hope at the end based upon the survival.
Love is there.
Philadelphia is the propulsion of a political cause at the end that moves it forward.
And this one is absolutely devoid of anything.
And had that Zaius and Heston conversation happened at the end, that might have made more sense with this fatalistic view of what's supposed to happen to us. I mean, it is so bleak and so dark. I would not have walked out of that movie happy at all.
So that brings me to the quote that I found from Mr. Post, our director, who said, I found it a very challenging experience working with the film's hodgepodge script and trying to give it a concept point of view, a unifying force. He felt that the film had a shape and a character that gave it a visual and visceral thrust, but also that the story was unclear and didn't measure up. Even the director is saying that post-event. And when Mr. Post didn't have as many film accomplishments as Mr. Schaffner did. Mr. Schaffner goes on to make Patton and many other things that are pretty revered. Mm-hmm. You're giving this to a man that has done really good work on television. And let's be fair. It's storytelling. When he can look at it and say it had nothing.
He's already admitting the flaws that the movie had from the beginning. Yeah.
That's right. What do you expect when even your director can't make an apology for it and say that there's anything here to grasp onto?
At the end of the credits, it rolls up and Charlton Heston is Taylor, and then one last little credit comes up. Sorry.
So I have a quote from Post that was part of the Starlog article that says, "I didn't want that ending." Mm-hmm. I thought it was very negative, pessimistic, very unhopeful. We did have other endings, but the order came down from Dick.
I had that same thing that Ted Post said that. And then there's the next quote, which is from producer Arthur B. Jacobs. Someone asked him, which of the films do you like the least? He simply says, the second one.
All right.
I think that they have to realize, and again, this is not the era of the sequel. This is not, we talked about how James Bond is basically a regurgitation every time they restart it. They put the character in a new situation. It's the same thing.
It's not until just recently that they've kept with the kind of continuity with
the Daniel Craig
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, where they actually are telling a story. And so you don't get into it until Star Wars. Someone out there, if you want to fight me on this and tell me, please tell me different. But you really think about Star Wars. Star Wars starts a new era, which is we told a story and we're going to evolve the characters. We're going to continue to grow that as though it's an evolving story. Yes, The Godfather Part 2, but Godfather, even in those two films, is based on one novel, and that novel contains so much stuff they were able to pull two films of it. It wasn't in that way that they're evolving it. They're just telling the further continuation of that novel.
Heston had said, talking about what he wanted to change about the film, he's like, the only story you could tell about had been told in Planet of the Apes. Anything further would just be adventures among the monkeys. From a studio standpoint, I understand what they did, but as an actor, there simply was nothing else to play.
I want to see the movie now, Adventures Among the Monkeys.
But that's just it. I mean, we read these fiction stories from our comic books all the time. I mean, Batman had an origin. We've got these villains. We're now reading the continuing adventures of Batman, and we're still enthralled with this character.
Right.
And it's just really kind of disappointing that Heston didn't recognize that people wanted to see and explore this world. And that's what Rod Serling wanted to do, was explore the world with them moving forward. That's what Dane kind of decided, kind of giving an ending. They wanted to recapture the Statue of Liberty scene at the end, and they worked really hard to try and figure something out. And they could not put that forward, so they just kind of resolved on this more adventures. Heston was disappointed by it.
I mean, what they could have done if they left everybody alive is in the next movie, what you do is you find out that Albuquerque is kind of like a Gettysburg type place where it's a reenactment city, and actually there is a major metropolitan. And why do these people live over here? Well, they've chosen to, swear off all the human technology we have. They're going to live the old ways.
Right.
And then you see the difference between that kind of culture clash.
I think that, Richard, you're touching into Batman, things that, sitting here in Zeus, and I look over and I joke with you guys, I see Batman all the time because it's right over Sean's shoulder. Batman is a character that is really the Count of Monte Cristo told again. You have everything stripped away and you use your resources to exact revenge. There's hope in that. There's hope that character, even though in the face of I've lost everything, I've lost my parents, I've lost all, I hope that Gotham can be better. I can make Gotham better. I can do whatever it may be, whatever iteration you find of Batman, there's hope. These characters have zero. They put Taylor and Brent on a planet, and this goes back to why do we even need Brent? They put them on a planet where they don't have anything. At least if you extract Brent from it, and Taylor has Nova, and if he's reunited with her, and then they escape, and they're with Cornelius and Zira, there's hope. They're together, and as it stands, you're to me, you almost negate the entire